Now, so when we hear about these labor camps, what they say is that people will be re-educated and come out with a new mindset after working hard and going through the labor of these camps. Can you tell us what it was like to actually go through a CCP, a communist Chinese labor camp?
The labor camp, actually, I'm doing a oral history video series now in Chinese language. So I just finished the part of the first day when I was sent to the camp. So the first sound we heard is squat. So on the first day in the labor camp, we were forced to squat like this with our hand, holding our heads and our heads lowered down to looking at our feet and motionlessly squat like this under the baking sun for 15 hours straight.
15 hours?
They couldn't endure it. They fainted away. They immediately apply electric batons on us to wake us up, and so that we can continue to squat under the sun for endless hours. I couldn't imagine how I managed to endure that for so long. And from the second day on, every day for 16 hours from from 6:30 in the morning till I think 10:30 in the evening, 16 hours per day. We have to stand in front of our cell and also like with our heads lowered, looking at our feet, our hands holding like this, and at the same time recite out loudly the very insulting regulations of the labor camp. And in the labor camp, we were never allowed to raise our head, even if when the police officer spoke to us, we had to look at our feet and answer like this. And when before we were given food or a meal, we need to kneel down and raise our bowl and say, oh, please give me some food, some kind of that sort of thing. So there were three parts of our labor camp, you can say career. The first is endless torture. On the, I think, second or third day, I was shocked by 2 electric batons on my leg, all over my body until I lost my consciousness. So the first part is endless torture. They said very frankly, the only purpose for us to be sent to the camp is to get us reformed. Reformed means we need to give up our belief in Falun Gong. We need to think from the bottom of our heart that Falun Gong is evil, Falun Gong is an evil cult, Falun Gong is bad, and the Communist Party saved us from this evil cult. So endless torture. And of course, the second part is waiting to be chosen as an organ donor. So they gave us a blood test, physical checkups repeatedly, and store the data of our blood type, tissue type, whatever, medical information there. So if anyone in the US or in Australia or anywhere, any place in the world, then if anyone needs an organ, they search inside that database, they find a match and they kill that person on demand so that his or her organs can be transplanted to this person if you can pay big enough money. That's why in the entire world, you need to wait for years for an organ. But if you go to China, they openly promise you they can find a match for you within days. Sometimes they did urgent organ transplant within 24 hours. So only by store a large number of people's data in that database and they do reverse match. Here, the normal match is, you wait for an organ. But in China is, they find an organ in a big, large data bank of living person and killed that living person to match you. So that's reverse match. So that's the second part of our labor camp career. The third part is, of course, why it is called labor camp, because they believe if they give me hard enough labor to do, we would be changed into a good person. So hard slave labor every day. So after we were transferred to the labor camp, I think that on the 38th day after we were sent to the camp, every day we got up at 5:30 in the morning and work until midnight. Sometimes we weren't given sleep at all, so that our products could, catch up the plane to Western countries. The police never bothered to hide the fact that all the products we made in the labor camp were exported to a Western country. That's why we must make sure the quality is good enough, because they are exported products. They earned dollars for our great love motherland, China. So slave labor. So at some stage, people ask me, do you miss your family in the labor camp? I said, honest, no, because every time virtually there were only two things on my mind. One is, how could I hold up for another day without being transformed or reformed? Another one is, how could I reach my quota today? Because every day you are given a quota, and if you couldn't reach your quota, you can't go to sleep. So after I used the bathroom or restroom, I dared not even to wash my hand, because hand washing needs time. And I dared not to waste that 1 minute on hand washing. I must use all my time. Most of the time we were hand knitting sweaters. So even on our way from our dorm to the dining hall, on the way, we are still knitting while we're walking. That's how hard the work was.
And this is for some American companies?
Yes, I think many companies from all over the world, but of course, most of the time they did not tell you which companies. Actually the labor camp, of course, they didn't get direct order from any Western companies. They get an order from a Chinese company, but that Chinese company may get an order from a foreign company. So somehow I found out that when I was there, that was in February 2000, the labor camp received an order from Nestle, the Swiss company Nestle, which make good coffee.
Mm-hmm.
We were given an order of 100,000 piece of rabbits, handmade rabbits, for them to give out as a gift. If you buy enough amount of their coffee, you get a little piece of rabbit this high. So it needs at least more than 10 hours and 30 procedures to do that little rabbit with hand. And I think the labor camp only get maybe some 4 cents of Australian dollars for one piece. And we got nothing. So that's why you got so many cheap made in China products. They may probably come from a labor camp who were made with blood and tears by innocent people like me. How can American companies compete with this kind of low-cost labor, cheap labor, slave labor? So every day in the labor camp, almost every day, we were forced to do this kind of all sorts of hard slave labor. So that's our labor camp personnel. And there were so many times I thought I would collapse. I would be driven into insanity. And I did witness other people who were driven into insanity because they couldn't handle the pressure. And because the police were given the quota to achieve, they have to, when I was there, their quota is they had to reform 95% of Falun Gong practitioners. If they couldn't achieve their quota, they would even either lose their job or punished or not paid or demoted. So they encourage the other real criminals in the labor camp to torture us as hard, as badly as they could. And if those criminals can torture us so bad and can make us sign that statement to say we will give up Falun Gong, they will be released ahead of time. And if they beat us to death, they will not be held accountable for what they do, because if they can't achieve their quota, we are useless people to them, so it's not a problem to beat us to death. So that's the labor camp reality in China. It was, I think, on the first day when I was there, I felt so like unreal. I feel, is this still the 21st century? Is this happening? And that labor camp is only about 20 some kilometers away from the Tiananmen Square, the so-called the heart of New China, and where the Beijing Olympic would going to be held years before. I couldn't believe it. I thought I only read this kind of thing in history book in the Nazi concentration camp. How could all this is still happening and right around me? I just couldn't believe it, but that was,
Wow.
I think, worse than the Nazi concentration camp, because I think the Nazis did not try to reform those Jews. We were not only tortured physically, but our minds, our will were, I think, raped by this kind of reform. They force us to curse our own belief and to do all things against our will, our nature, and to transform really a human being into a non-human being without thoughts, without will. You are not allowed to have any kind of your own free thinking. You have to think from the bottom of your heart that the CCP is great, the torture is great, because you are evil cult member, so it is good to torture you. You have to believe in what they say, and you need to help them to torture your fellow Falun Gong practitioners if you want to be released. That's how hard the situation was in the labor camp. That's why so many people were driven into insanity. I think any normal human being couldn't really handle that kind of mental, physical pressure, and everything was pushed into extreme amount of, I never seen anything so evil in this human history or in this human world.